Right now on Morning News Now, riding a wave of wins, Team USA dominating the medal count thanks to an amazing run that has seen an American on the podium every day since the Games began. From land to sea, we have a look at all the Olympic highlights from Paris and beyond. Also this morning, millions of people from Florida to North Carolina waking up under flood alerts as soaking rains and heavy winds bring down trees and power lines and turn roads into rivers. We're tracking where Debby is heading now and the areas that could see up to 30 inches of rain. Plus, critical advice in her first decision as Democratic presidential nominee. Kamala Harris is set to announce her pick for a running mate today. What we've learned about the rollout, the decision-making process, and where things go from here with just over 90 days until the election. And markets on the mend after a meltdown that saw a global nosedive. Some international markets appear to be rebounding this morning. But is it enough to ease renewed fears of recession? We'll dig into those details. Everything's stable or a little bit higher for this morning so far.
But it kept you busy yesterday.
It sure did. It sure did. It really did.
Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Christine Romans. I'm in for Savannah Sellers. We begin this hour in Paris with another historic day of medals for the U.S. at the Summer Olympics.
Yeah, Team USA now tied for most gold medals won in Paris after Caroline Marks gave the U.S. its second Olympic surfing title in a row on Monday. And in the women's discus throw, Valerie Allman won her second consecutive gold. On the gymnastics mat, a dramatic curtain call for Team USA's Golden Girls. Jordan Childs was the last competitor in the floor final. Now, it initially seemed that she missed out on the podium, placing fifth, but a late appeal to the judges raised her score by 1/10 of a point, which was just enough to give the 23-year-old a bronze, her first individual Olympic medal. Here's a little bit of what Childs had to say following the event.
I was so tired, I didn't even realize my coach was putting an inquiry in, and I was like, okay, yeah, like, let's see, it can vary. So when it came through, I was like very proud of myself.
Simone Biles also ended her Paris Games with more hardware. She won silver in the floor event. That was her fourth medal of the Games and 11th of her Olympic career. We're going to be bringing you more from Paris later in the hour. This morning, tens of thousands of people across Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina are waking up without power as Tropical Storm Debby barrels up the East Coast. At least one person in Georgia and 4 people in Florida have died from weather-related incidents. Since Saturday, the storm has dumped more than a foot of rain on a couple counties, Manatee and Sarasota counties in western Florida. Officials say crews have performed hundreds of rescues from flooded homes and stalled vehicles. You can see in this photo the floodwaters are so high, one car in Sarasota totally submerged underwater. Now parts of Georgia are under mandatory shelter-in-place orders as officials warn that dangerous driving conditions there could get worse. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson is live in Savannah with the latest. Priscilla, good morning. So how has the weather escalated there over the last 24 hours, and just how bad could it get today?
Yeah, Joe, good morning. It has been a steady deluge of rain, and I want to show you some of the damage that we're seeing here. You can see that this entire sidewalk has come up as a result of the amount of rain. The ground can simply not take it, and it has caused this massive tree to come crashing down, blocking the road, just barely missing this home right here. And so that is some of the damage that we're seeing from this rain. So far, Savannah, Georgia has gotten about 8.5 inches, and as you can see, it's still coming down. It's going to continue coming down throughout the day here. And we expect in this region, we could see up to 30 inches of rain in some areas. So certainly that is a big concern as this storm continues to stall and sort of hover in this area. Joe?
Already seeing so many incredible images, and we know there's much more to come. What can you tell us, Priscilla, about the teenager in Georgia who died?
Yeah, so tragically, a 19-year-old boy was killed after a tree fell onto his home, and that's according to our affiliate who spoke with the coroner. So these falling trees, certainly a deadly threat. But the other major threat that officials here are concerned about is the flooding. Because of the amount of rain that is coming down, this area is under a flash flood watch through Friday, because even after the rain stops, we're going to be watching for the rivers that are going to be cresting and could potentially cause catastrophic, deadly flooding. Joe?
And Priscilla, in a video update last night, the mayor of Savannah said that they were nowhere near the end of this when talking about the impact of Tropical Storm Debby. What is his main message to people there? What's his biggest concern?
Well, the message is that this is not over yet, and so people need to continue to heed those warnings. And we saw a lot of that yesterday with people filling sandbags, trying to prepare their homes, making sure they had flashlights and things like that in case they needed to hunker down because of this flooding. And it's important that as we talk about this, we don't forget about the climate connection here, that it is because of the warming atmosphere that the atmosphere is able to hold so much of this water and then dump it like this. And it is what our climate unit refers to as an atmospheric traffic jam that is causing these storms to stall and sit in these areas for hours, if not days in some cases. And that is historic. It is not something that we have seen in the past. And I should note that Debby is going to go back out over the ocean, where it could potentially re-intensify because of the warm waters out there, to give you a sense of how all of this is happening. Joe?
Priscilla Thompson in Savannah. Priscilla, thank you so much. Let's bring in meteorologist Angie Lastman for more on this traffic jam, as Priscilla described it right there. Angie, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. Priscilla's exactly right. We have these kind of steering currents in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and when they aren't moving quite as fast, we get situations like this where we have a system with a whole lot of moisture sitting close to the water, gaining more of that moisture and potentially strengthening over the next couple of days, but also just kind of sitting in that area and dumping all that rain. And this is exactly what we're waking up to in a lot of spots. You heard Priscilla say it. Still Tropical Storm Debby, winds at 45 miles per hour, but notice that really heavy band of rain that's kind of set up across parts of South Carolina. This is multiple hours of radar data, and check out where the center of the system is. There's not a lot of movement happening, and all of those heavy bands of rain aren't moving a lot either. So we're seeing multiple inches expected here on top of what we've already seen to come. This is going to be something we deal with for a couple of days in this region, actually. 45-mile-per-hour winds right now, moving northeast at just 7 miles per hour. So it is moving, but not all that fast. No surprise that we've got these flood alerts up. I want you to pay special attention to the flash flood warnings. They've been expanded slightly through the morning hours, but they do include the Charleston area. So if you have plans to leave your house today and you live in this region, you're likely going to see some flooded out roadways. This will be something, again, not just today, but over the next couple of days. And here's why. So we likely will see this system work its way a little farther offshore, slowly but surely. It'll sit out into those ocean waters here for a little while. Notice this is Tuesday at 2 p.m. By Wednesday at 2 p.m., 24 hours later, still sitting offshore. Then it kind of takes a little bit of a turn and works its way back towards the coast. This means that it'll spend some time over those warm waters, gaining a little bit of strength, but not likely becoming a hurricane again. Either way, making a secondary landfall here as we get into the later parts of this work week. That's Thursday, 2 p.m., working its way across South Carolina. In the meantime, all of that rain is just sitting on top of this same area. So it's not going to be hard for us to continue to see the flooding concerns for, again, not just today, but in the coming days. As we get to the end of the work week and into the weekend, the system does weaken and it works up the East Coast, but then it starts to bring some of that rain to parts of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Today, though, our main concern for the flash flood risk is going to stretch from specifically that high risk is going to be from Brunswick all the way just south of Wilmington. But either way, across this region, again, the flooding is going to be our main concern with this system. We do have some minor storm surge that we're going to watch for 2 to 4 feet along the coast, especially as that system sits offshore. This will be something that we watch closely. One other note, we do have the potential for some strong storms today. 28 million people are at risk. This is separate from what we're looking at as far as Debby is concerned. This is another system that's working across parts of the Great Lakes, and it will bring some rain to parts of the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, especially as we get into the overnight hours. We'll watch for flash flood concern there, but we could also see some stronger storms with this system, Joe. Likely just some strong winds, maybe some hail. Tornado risk is going to be low, but another thing that we're watching. And the flooding remains the biggest issue over the coming days for both of these spots.
Just a rainy day all around the country. All right, Definitely. Angie, thank you so much. Today will be a consequential day in the race for the White House, with Vice President Kamala Harris set to announce her running mate just hours after she made history. Overnight, Ms. Harris officially became the Democratic presidential nominee, making her the first woman of color to lead a major party ticket. It comes comes after a 5-day virtual roll call by Democratic National Convention delegates, just over 2 weeks after President Biden announced that he would not seek re-election. Vice President Harris is expected to announce who her VP pick will be today ahead of a campaign rally tonight in Philadelphia for the newly minted Democratic ticket. The Harris campaign vetted 6 potential vice presidential contenders. According to a source familiar with the meetings, Ms. Harris met separately this past weekend with Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. For the latest, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba and NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. Good morning to both of you. Monica, let's begin with you. Walk us through what we can expect today from the vice president and her soon-to-be running mate.
Well, I can tell you, Joe, that as of last night, Vice President Harris had not made her final decision. We understand she wanted to sleep on it for one more night before crystallizing that really important pick. But we do expect that she will formally announce that in the coming hours. And then, of course, the pair will appear together for the first time on stage in Philadelphia later this evening. And just a really fun fact here that shows you about how compressed this timeline was and the decision-making process. We understand that the Harris campaign actually has printed multiple signage options with multiple names on it to go with whatever decision she does end up making so that they can use them pretty immediately. So we expect the rollout today to look somewhat similar to what we've seen in past cycles, which is there will be this big announcement. It will likely be in the form of some kind of message to supporters or to the public. And then there will be some digital media and some video components that we see rolled out on a bunch of different platforms throughout the day to try to build some momentum into the event tonight, and then to really also start a major fundraising campaign, which is also what they do in these big moments. But we do believe that we know who the final contenders are. We think we know, but of course it's really ultimately up to her. And now we are very close to finally having that decision, given the Ohio ballot deadline tomorrow, which is part of why the DNC needed to wrap up her nomination process. And then they'll do that for the vice presidential nominee in short order as well, Joe.
So, John, let's bring you in. As we mentioned, there are 6 finalists who've been vetted by the Harris campaign. Seems like it got narrowed down to 3. Some are even thinking it's really narrowed down to 2. Explain to us the vetting process and ultimately what Harris seems to be looking for in her VP pick.
I mean, the vetting process starts with, basically the records of these people. Eric Holder, the former attorney general, ran that process. I collected information on them. He and his team met with many of them. And ultimately, once they've cleared the vetting process or failed it, they're sort of winnowed down. The vice president met with some of them this weekend. And there's a public consumption version of what matters. And I think these things matter. But the public consumption version is she cares a lot about who a governing partner is. She cares about a personal relationship with this person, and hopefully they'll help her on the campaign trail. I think the reality is sort of the reverse of those things. All of them are important, of course, but the main key component for any vice presidential candidate is first, do no harm. Try not to be somebody out there referring to quote unquote childless cat ladies if you're going to be a vice presidential pick. And so it's basically the first to do no harm, and then hopefully they're able to help swing some sort of constituency or state a little bit in her direction.
And there'll be, whoever it is, such an intense looking at that person's record. And so that's something, of course, that is going to make the news cycle over the next couple days. Monica, whoever it is, it's going to be a busy week ahead. They're set to visit a lot of battleground states. What's the goal here with this multi-state push?
Yeah, they really want to barnstorm, but I have to tell you, just because of the story you were just covering in detail at the top of the show, Joe, some of these plans are now being postponed a little bit because of Tropical Storm Debby. So a planned trip to North Carolina, for instance, is now going to be moved in addition to that stop in Savannah, Georgia. So at least the end of the week is going to look a little bit different. But at first, she's going to be heading to those really key states, the so-called blue wall. She's going to do Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan in those first 24 hours or so with her newly minted running mate. And then they will kind of readjust the schedule before she heads out west to Nevada and to Arizona. So they are really trying to put the focus on the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt. And they know that some of those battlegrounds where they have according to some polls, at least tighten the margin a little bit, are a huge priority. So expect to see her and her running mate on the trail all week long, and then a little bit of that will continue next week as they try to ride some of that energy heading into the Democratic National Convention, which starts in Chicago on August 19th. So they're really trying to use all of this for the enthusiasm aspect to then build to that big moment, too. Joe.
And John, Vice President Harris is now officially the first woman of color to lead a major party ticket. Real quick here, help us put into perspective just how historic this nomination is.
Well, 105 years ago or so, women didn't have the right to vote, at least was not guaranteed in the United States. So, think about the last century of activism, a little bit more than the last century of activism, putting women in a position to vote. I think, without that, Kamala Harris would not be vice president. Without some of the campaigns before her, Shirley Chisholm running for president, Margaret Chase Smith on the Republican side in the 1960s, Hillary Clinton, obviously, probably the one that's most recent and most, in the front of people's minds. This is a historic moment in terms of a woman being again a major nominee for president, and of course having an opportunity to potentially win, and obviously being of color as a black woman and an Indian American woman, that is also hugely historic.
All right, Monica and John, big day ahead. Thank you both. In Arizona, former Trump attorney Jenna Ellis is now cooperating with prosecutors in the state's fake electors case, according to that state's attorney general. Ellis was one of 18 Trump allies who pleaded not guilty back in May to fraud, forgery, and conspiracy charges. They're accused of taking part in a scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in Arizona. But with this cooperation agreement Ellis signed Monday, prosecutors say they are now dropping the charges against her. Joining us now for more is NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos. Danny, good morning. So Arizona's AG said in a statement Monday, this agreement represents a significant step forward in our case. Walk us through this agreement, what it could mean for the case.
This is a classic cooperation agreement, and Jenna Ellis fits the profile of the classic cooperator. Way back many months ago when she was first charged in the Georgia case, I would have told you the same thing, because she is charged with one count in the Georgia case, for example, which she already pleaded guilty to. And in that case, she is a professional, kind of on the periphery of what all the other alleged bad conduct is. Same thing in the Arizona case. This is the ideal person for the government or prosecutors to go after and offer a cooperation agreement. And what we can glean from that agreement is that she offered them information that's valuable to them. She came in for what's called a proffer. They call it a free talk in Arizona. You bare your soul, you tell them everything, and basically the government, the prosecutors are shopping. If they like what they hear, they'll offer you a deal. And look at that deal. Charges are being dropped. Joe, I can't tell you how rare that is. Almost always in cooperation agreements, there's some element of taking responsibility so that when the witness takes the stand, they're not in that, they didn't get that sweet a deal. In other words, the charges aren't completely dropped. Normally, they pleaded guilty to the haberdashery act or crossing the street without a signal, something like that, so they can at least take on some culpability. It makes them look more credible.
The agreement says that Ellis spoke with the prosecution the day before the lead prosecutor came out and told everyone, hey, plea deals might be in the works. We're talking with folks. Could we see more of these people who are charged in this case potentially come forward now that Ellis has?
Cooperators operate under the same physics rules as dominoes. When you see one usually cooperate, the others get a sense of, it's like when you're on the internet and you're buying something, you say, act now, this offer is only going to be around for another 10 minutes. And they know, these other defendants know that as more cooperators are added, the government needs additional cooperators less. So there's always that element of time. Oh, look, that person is now cooperating. We ought to really think about it, because that just means the government's case is getting stronger and stronger. And we know and can assume that if the government offered her a plea agreement, they like what she had to say. So that means it was so valuable to them, they offered her the best deal of all, which is dropping the charges. Again, incredibly rare.
Bottom line, where do things go from here for both the prosecution and those who are defending the suspects here?
Oh, I think the prosecution lets this hang out in the air for as long as they can. And I think they know there are good chances that other defendants are coming forward. And by the way, if you were a betting person, Jenna Ellis would have been the ideal person to come forward early because she's already done so in other cases. And like I said, she fits the classic profile. I'll be honest with you. I'm a lawyer. If I was charged in the way Jenna Ellis was, I'd probably be the very first one to roll in on a proffer agreement and cut a deal, because professionals, lawyers like Jenna Ellis, have more to lose than, say, a hardened criminal who's looking at his third conviction. Those are the people who have the stomach to go to trial. People like me, forget it. I'd rather try the case than be the defendant.
All right. Danny Zabalos, appreciate it. Thank you so much. Coming up, the death of Sonia Massie triggered national outrage. Still ahead, what the former deputy who shot and killed her is now saying about why he fired that deadly shot. But first, American leaders are working to prevent the war in Gaza from spreading. We've got the latest from the Middle East as Israel prepares for a possible Iranian attack.
All right, we are back with the latest on the crisis in the Middle East. Israel says it's preparing for Iran to retaliate against it following the assassinations of senior leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah. Meanwhile, President Biden has met with his national security team to discuss ways to prevent the 10-month siege of the Gaza Strip from exploding into a wider Middle East war. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez is in Tel Aviv and joins us now with the latest. And good morning, Raf. Do we know any more about this potential attack from Iran, and will it look any different than the current fighting that's already going on?
Christine, good morning. The feeling among Israeli officials is that this attack could really come at any time. Israel was on very high alert last night. The attack did not ultimately come, but if you walk the streets of Tel Aviv, you will meet a lot of very anxious people. For a week now, citizens of this country have been walking around just not knowing when these Iranian missiles might be coming. We did get one potential clue about timing, just trying to read the tea leaves here. Iran has called for a meeting of foreign ministers of Islamic states. That meeting will be held in Saudi Arabia on Wednesday. So there is some feeling now that potentially the Iranians will want to wait until the other side of that meeting before launching the attack. But the reality is, at this point, no one except perhaps the very top leadership of the Iranian regime knows exactly what is going to happen. In terms of anxiety here, it was not helped by former President Trump going up on a live stream yesterday saying that the attack was just hours away. Shortly after that statement from the former president, the current Republican nominee, the spokesman of the Israeli military actually was forced to go up on social media and say everyone needs to remain calm. There's no evidence this attack is coming. So in terms of how it might look different, as you said, there's been 9.5, nearly 10 months of fighting over the Israel-Lebanon border between Israeli forces and the militants of Hezbollah. We saw that fighting continuing today. It appears at least 2 Israeli civilians were wounded by Hezbollah fire earlier. But we are expecting that this will be much larger in scale. And an Israeli official tells me Israel is bracing for potentially several days of attacks from both Iran and Hezbollah. Christine.
So, Raf, we know that President Biden and other top officials have been frequently briefed on this situation. How does the U.S. plan to get involved if violence escalates?
Yeah, so President Biden, Vice President Harris, the U.S. top national security team meeting in the Situation Room at the White House yesterday. You can see that on your screen there. The president has deployed additional U.S. forces to the Middle East. That's the aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln. It is several cruisers, several destroyers, and an extra squadron of fighter jets. And the White House has said, ideally, they are hoping the presence of these American forces will deter Iran from giving the order to attack. I got to tell you, the feeling among both U.S. and Israeli officials is that is pretty unlikely. Every indication is that the Iranians are absolutely determined to move ahead following the assassination of Hamas's political chief in their capital last week. But assuming that Iranian attack does begin, we think that it would look similar to what happened back in April, in the sense that you would have American forces across the region involved in trying to shoot down those incoming Iranian missiles as they traverse the airspace of both Iraq and Jordan and ultimately towards Israel. Christine.
And Raf, what about this suspected rocket attack on Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq? It injured several Americans yesterday. Do we have any more details on that, and do we know who is behind it?
Yeah, so this is an airbase. It's in northern Iraq. It is a frequent target for Iranian-backed Shia militia groups, and a U.S. official tells NBC News that it does appear that several U.S. service personnel were injured in last night's attack. It is not clear at this point how many, how severe those injuries are. One of these Iranian-backed groups, calling themselves the Revolutionaries, have claimed credit for that attack yesterday. It does not appear that this is directly linked to these broader tensions with Iran and with Hezbollah. We have seen a lot of fire towards American forces in both Iraq and Syria since October 7th. Christine.
All right, Raf, thank you so much for all that.
That is some other international headlines, starting with the latest on the protests in the UK.
NBC international correspondent Josh Letterman joins us now with more. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, Christine. There were more riots and arrests overnight, including some violence. Protesters threw Molotov cocktails and bricks at police officers who were trying to keep the peace. And now Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he's setting up a standing army of specialized police officers to try to quell the violence. He says these rioters have been amped up by disinformation online about immigrants and Muslims. Now over to Latin America, where health officials are on alert over an outbreak of the obscure Oropouche virus, which is spread by mosquitoes and small flies. The Pan American Health Organization says the first deaths from the virus have now been confirmed in Brazil, and more than 8,000 cases of the virus have been discovered so far. Officials are also concerned about it being transmitted by pregnant mothers to their babies. And we'll end up in the Philippines, where one Olympic winner is getting ready to move into some new digs. Gymnast Carlos Yulo became the Philippines' first male gold medalist in history after placing first in Paris in both the floor exercise and vault routine. And now a local real estate company says it is rewarding him and any other Filipino gold medalist, for that matter, with a 2-bedroom condo valued at more than $400,000 US. So talk about a little extra motivation.
Okay, I hope there's enough room, though, for him to do the floor exercise in that condo. So, all right, Josh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, it turns out an apple a day may actually keep the doctor away.
Why researchers say the benefits of a healthy lifestyle may extend beyond physical health. Our mental health check is next.
Welcome back. We're learning new details about the moments leading up to the fatal shooting of Sonia Massie. Newly released reports show that former Deputy Sean Grayson claims he felt his life was in danger when entering Massie's home. NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton has the latest.
Field reports just released by the county sheriff's office reveal former Deputy Sean Grayson says he feared for his life in the moments before he shot and killed Sonia Massie.
How would it hurt you? You called us.
In the new report written 3 days after the incident, Grayson claims it was this remark that frightened him.
Oh, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. You better not. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in your face.
He says he interpreted this to mean she was going to kill me. I drew my weapon out and pointed it at Sonia. I gave her loud, clear verbal commands to drop the pot of boiling liquid.
Drop the pot! Drop the pot!
He says as he approached, Sonia stood up from a crouched position, grabbing the pot, raising it above her head, and throwing the boiling substance at me. I was in imminent fear.
Shots fired! Shots fired!
Soon after, Grayson shot Massie in the face, killing the 36-year-old.
I'm not taking hot boiling water to the face.
According to the department, he did not activate his body camera until after shooting her, making it more challenging to verify what happened.
All right, thanks to Antonia Hilton for that report.
Right, time now for our weekly mental health check-in, and we're kicking things off with a new study that shows how effective healthy eating and exercise can be for helping with some types of depression.
Plus, more on Noah Lyles, a.k.a. the world's fastest man, and his inspiring message to fans about overcoming obstacles to take home the gold. Joining us now, psychotherapist Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Dr. Robbie, always good to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us. So we've got a new trial out of Australia. The findings suggest that when it comes to mild or moderate depression, good lifestyle habits like a healthy diet can be just as much, even more effective than therapy. So explain this one and why maybe this approach wouldn't be appropriate for everyone out there.
Yeah, so this was a study, a small study that was done during the pandemic. And what they looked at was actually recommending diet and exercise with professionals and seeing the effectiveness it had with their depression. And the impact was quite impressive. And so I think it's really important to note that this is not instead of therapy, but they're thinking in terms of expanding the mental health universe to really incorporate this as a first line of defense. And I love this idea. I think it's really great because we know that it's important to address the body and the mind, not to look at it separately, but to look at it as another factor that's a treatment recommendation.
Robbie, more schools are introducing things like meditation, mindfulness, yoga exercises to help kids' mental health. We're going to show you some kids at Roberta T. Smith Elementary in Georgia. They're taking a daily meditation break. My son did this in second grade. He could meditate for 10 minutes because his second grade teacher thought it was so important. What are some of the benefits of this, and how can families help their kids at home give it a try?
The studies are really impressive when it comes to meditation, especially for kids. It reduces their stress, their anxiety, it increases their well-being, and most importantly, their ability to self-regulate, to really observe themselves and to give themselves a pause before making a decision. And so in addition to learning this in school, it is great if parents can explain to their children why meditation is so useful, maybe do it together and focus on deep breathing exercises for a period of time. Breath is free. You can take it wherever you go. And then maybe even have an affirmation. So kids are learning it at school and at home, and it just becomes part of their toolkit.
I like that. And Goldie Hawn is a huge advocate for this. She has a program about it. I interviewed her years ago about that, of really getting kids to take time to focus on mindfulness. All right, we cannot stop talking about Noah Lyles, the world's fastest man, after that heart-stopping 100-meter win. He is yet another Olympian who's been so candid about his mental health, posting on X about his struggles with attention deficit disorder, anxiety, and depression, saying, what you have does not define what you can become. I love that. Why is it so important that role models do this? And how can we keep this momentum going long after the Olympic Games are over?
What a superstar Noah Lyles is. And he also is a leader in terms of talking about mental health and well-being. And it's a very powerful message coming from a winner, basically stating if you have depression, if you have anxiety, whatever you have, it's not a stopping point. It doesn't define you, and it doesn't predict your ability to be successful in the world. So it's really reframing how we look at mental health issues. Part of the problem is when you are suffering, you tend to see that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And this is reframing it, saying it's just a stop along the road to address what you need to address, and then you focus on what you want to create. And that's what matters. You get the treatment you need and focus on who you want to be and what you want to do.
It was an inspiring little mental health check-in we had there. All right, Dr. Robbie, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Coming up, from the GOAT to Clark Kent, the Paris Olympics have been chock full of memorable moments.
But what Olympian or Olympic sport has the most has the world talking the most? After the break, we'll sit down with a Google Trends expert to find out what really has everyone buzzing. That's next.
Every 4 years, the Olympics have us glued to our screens. Whether we're streaming or watching the games on TV, many of us are not missing a beat.
We are also using Google to fill us in on what we missed or what we should know about a particular event. Google Trends expert Sarah Armstrong is here in the studio with us to break down what's captured America's attention with these Olympic Games. So nice to see you. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we've got some unexpected stars. We've got some new sports. What are you watching?
Oh my gosh, I mean, the Olympics have been so much fun. I'm watching some of those most searched athletes. I'm sure you are too. Can you guess who the most searched athlete might be?
Well, we just got
there we go.
But guess what? I was going to totally guess that.
Simone Biles. That's followed by Katie Ledecky, most decorated woman in the U.S., which is amazing. Of course, we have LeBron James on there, Suni Lee making number 3. So some good athletes.
It's all compelling. It's all compelling.
So what are some of the jaw-dropping moments that maybe have people looking for specific sports, or maybe they're wanting to learn more about a certain sport? Because there's so many things we're introduced to during the Olympics that we've never seen before, we rarely get exposed to.
Yeah, I love looking at these breakout searches. So those are searches that have over 5,000% increase in search interest. And we're seeing Pummel Horse Guy spiking. The specialist, Steven. He's so amazing, definitely capturing people's attention. I also saw chocolate chip muffin reached an all-time high in search interest, and that's that Norwegian swimmer. He loves the muffins in the Olympic Village, and so they're spiking.
Are there a lot of how to be an Olympic swimmer, how to be an Olympic gymnast?
Yeah, so how to become every Olympics hits an all-time high again. And so I guess folks are watching and then they're looking up how to become a swimmer, how to become a gymnast, and maybe they'll be in the Olympics.
There's hope for us.
Not too late, not too late.
How most of us are watching these games from home. Any tips on how to make that experience better?
Yeah, search actually updated, so we're making it really easy. So if you look up an athlete, a team you're interested in, we'll show you the medal count updated to the minute in real time, results, highlights from NBC. So it's all right there for you.
All right, we should switch gears a little bit. Yesterday, the judge handed down Google a major loss, ruling the company illegally held a monopoly in both the search and text advertising markets. How might this impact those who use Google? Do we know?
So it's a fair question. I'm not the best person to speak about it. I do know that people come to Google because they want to, not because they have to. And even when I'm watching the Olympics, I have Google up the entire time, looking up those trends, what's the latest, asking those questions. So I think people use Google because it's a great experience. I know we'll appeal, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, there will be an appeal. Sarah Armstrong, so nice to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How to be an Olympic swimmer.
Exactly.
You could do it. I could do it.
I cannot do it. I guarantee you. Not a search engine or tool or coach in the world can teach me that. Time for our CNBC Money Minute. Let's get more on the Google search engine ruling.
Yes, CNBC's Bertha Coombs joins us now with the details. Good morning, Bertha.
Hey, good morning, guys. You know, I actually had to search for what other search engines there were. The only one I know of is DuckDuckGo. Apparently, there are nearly 24. And a federal judge is hoping to see more of them make way, ruling that Google's search business has been a monopoly, violating antitrust laws. Now, the court found issue with the fact that Google paid huge sums of money to ensure that it is the default search engine on many devices like the iPhone. Most people tend to stick with searching the default option. Analysts say it's likely the judge will say that Google can no longer pay to be the default, and companies like Apple, which get some pretty nice revenues from that, will have to prompt users to choose a search engine and be able to change their settings. Meantime, executives from Boeing will testify at a 2-day hearing about the blowout of the door panel on an Alaska Airlines flight back in January. The National Transportation Safety Board says witnesses include Boeing's senior VP of quality, which is a new position created after that accident, and officials from Boeing supplier Spirit Aerosystems. Spirit had installed the door plug on the Alaska Airlines plane, but the panel was removed and the bolts taken off in a Boeing factory to make repairs. Apparently were not replaced properly. OpenAI co-founder John Schulman is leaving the maker of ChatGPT to join Anthropic. That's a startup backed by Amazon. Schulman says he wants to start a new chapter of his career, returning to hands-on technical work. The move comes as OpenAI is facing significant turnover. The company's AI safety leader was reassigned last month, while another co-founder and chief scientist exited back last May. So there's been a lot of turnover there. Sam Altman is still with the company and apparently still leading things, but folks are watching that.
No, most definitely. All right, Bertha, thank you so much. Wall Street looking to rebound today after suffering one of its worst days in the last 2 years.
Yeah, the three major stock indexes all finished the day yesterday down more than 2%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down more than 1,000 points. The market meltdown was sparked by a massive sell-off in the Japanese stock market, which suffered its worst day since the 1987 Black Monday crash.
Help us break it all down. We're joined by friend of the show, Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver. Caleb, good to have you with us. So we know the Japanese market rebounded in a big way today, with the Nikkei finishing the day up more than 10%. So is that a potential indicator of what we could expect today on Wall Street?
Yeah, we're set up for a little bit of a relief rally, but I don't think the volatility is over, not by a long shot. That was a big sell-off yesterday and Friday, too, and there is some movements inside the market. Christine mentioned the Japanese stock market. Well, the Bank of Japan did lower interest rates last week. That does affect the way the rest of the capital markets work, and that set the sell-off, plus that softer than expected jobs report we got on Friday has the drumbeat growing around a potential recession. But this is the price you pay to be an investor. Sometimes we get these 2-3% sell-offs, and sometimes we get a 10% drawdown or a correction during the course of a year. You average about one of those a year. Today, things look like they're going to settle a little bit, but I think there's still a lot of uncertainty in the stock market and in the capital markets in general.
Yeah, I agree, Caleb. I mean, I think stable is what we can say for this morning. Stable after a big sell-off. You don't want to see 2 days in a row of this. Let's talk about what happened in Japan. Last Wednesday, the Bank of Japan raised interest rates. That disrupted this very common carry trade. I know it's all very technical, but some technical currency and lending trades in the economy. And then there was this report in the U.S. that for 4 months in a row now you've seen the jobless rate rise. It's kind of a big soup of uncertainty at this moment, right?
Yeah, and then you add the news that Warren Buffett has sold half of his position, Berkshire Hathaway's position in Apple, and if one of the greatest investors of all time is selling one of the greatest companies' stock, you got to wonder. So there's so many walls of worry and things to think about. But that carry trade you mentioned is very interesting. Japanese yen had been very cheap to borrow for a lot of investors, and they were borrowing yen and using it to buy stocks. A lot of these big technology stocks that have done so well over the past year. We're talking about Meta, we're talking about NVIDIA, of course, Amazon, a lot of these companies. So as soon as those rates were raised by the Bank of Japan, well, that trade didn't make so much sense anymore, and a lot of these big positions were unwound by big investors. Now, for you and me and the viewers out there, we don't make trades like this. We're not investors like this at a big scale. We passively invest every couple of weeks. We just got to ride these waves out because they get rough.
I just think that there's this morning people will be reading in the newspaper recession fears. Let's just back up a second. There's a big technical reasons in the market why things have kind of come undone yesterday.
Caleb, another question I have is, one of the big worries, especially after the jobs report Friday, is that the Federal Reserve was maybe waiting too long to cut interest rates. We know they decided to keep them at the same level this month, wait until September. First of all, explain what's been the Fed's reasoning for doing that, and could they choose to maybe meet earlier to lower those interest rates?
Yeah, they could potentially, but that would be highly extraordinary. And I don't think there's anything going on in the economy right now or the markets that would make the Fed make that extraordinary move. They don't respond to big sell-offs in the stock market unless it lasts for multiple days and we're down 10, 15, 20%. That's probably not going to happen. But the Fed doesn't want to start lowering rates too quickly because it doesn't want to reignite inflation. When the Fed lowers interest rates, money becomes cheaper, people borrow more, and that drives prices up. So the Fed has done a good job of bringing inflation down and has tried to do a reasonable job of keeping the job market in check. But as we learned last week, the July job report was much softer than expected. So it's got this dual mandate, and it's just very hard for it to manage. But this is kind of what people are worrying about. We probably won't get a rate cut until September.
But Caleb, it's a reminder the stocks just don't go straight up. They've basically gone straight up for 2 years. And there's an argument that tech was driving a lot of these gains, particularly all this optimism over artificial intelligence. I mean, you look at NVIDIA, for example, it doubled over the past year and then fell 6% yesterday. That sounds like a reasonable pause that refreshes, to use a Wall Street slang.
Absolutely. We get overbought and we get oversold. We swing too far. But for long-term investors, this is the price you pay for investing. It is a market. It goes up and down, but generally it goes up and to the right, an average of about 8 to 10% a year if you just stay invested for the long term. And by the way, we're still up 8.5% this year in the S&P 500, not in a bear market by any means.
That's the revenge of the buy and hold investor. You just sit back and you just let the market go down every now and then, and you buy cheap, you buy stuff on sale, and then it's good.
It's on sale.
It's on sale.
There you go. Caleb Silver, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, he grinded his way to the podium in Olympic street skating. Now he's back from Paris, here in New York, here in our studio.
Yeah, after the break, we'll sit down with Olympic silver medalist Jagger Eaton to discuss what it felt like to be in what he called the greatest street skating final ever. That's next. Welcome back. If you can believe it, there are only 5 days left of the Summer Olympics in Paris, but there's still plenty of hardware that Team USA can win to add to their commanding lead in the medal count.
Yeah, the U.S. won 7 new medals yesterday, including 2 from that dramatic final day of competition for women's gymnastics. A stunning turn of events helped Jordan Chiles secure her first ever individual Olympic medal in the floor final, and also saw Simone Biles win her 4th medal of these Olympics. NBC's Jay Gray is our go-to Olympic expert, joins us from Paris. with the latest. I mean, Jay, everything about gymnastics has been a roller coaster of emotions. So, of course, yesterday had to be first the balance beam final. Let's get through that quickly because that was kind of depressing. But then what led to Jordan Childs winning bronze on the floor?
Yeah, Joe, Christine, what a finals it was. And it kind of marks what this redemption sure was all about, right? We go into the final day of gymnastics. We hear from Simone Biles before it all starts. She says, look, we're tired mentally and physically. We got to focus on this last day. They go first, obviously, to the beam. It's Simone Biles and Suni Lee. Both take a tumble. A lot of the gymnasts fell from that beam yesterday. They end up with 5th and 6th, respectively. But Biles bouncing back, and that pun is intended. Her powerful floor routine was incredible. She takes home silver. She stepped out of bounds a couple of times. Jordan Childs with the bronze, though there was a bit of controversy. The Romanian gymnast initially was awarded the bronze. The U.S. coaches said, hey, wait a second. You didn't judge Childs' routine on its difficulty. They looked at it and said, hey, you're right. She gets the bronze. So a good way to close things out here. 4 golds and a silver for Simone Biles. Not bad at all.
Oh.
All right, the U.S. currently on top of the leaderboard. Wow. In all-around medals, tied for the most golds. Who else did we see bring home some hardware, Jay?
Well, today we've already seen some hardware brought home. Surfing, the gold, Caroline Marks, 12 hours behind Paris, close to 10,000 miles away. I volunteered to cover the surfing in Tahiti. Nobody would bite on that. She takes home the gold. And then the women's discus and Valerie Allman. How great is she? 2 golds in a row at 2 separate Olympics. It was fantastic to see Valerie Allman bringing home a 2nd gold medal in a row. Tonight, you've got a lot of things going on as well, and so more chances at medals for sure.
Colin Jost beat you out for that surfing assignment, James. Sorry about that. All right, this is our favorite.
Right.
This is our favorite part of the morning. What are you looking forward to most today? I presume it has something to do with what you're wearing.
Let's talk first a little bit about what we're going to see today. Women's soccer taking on Germany in the semifinals. Those have all been close matches. That'll be cool to see. You've got skateboarding, the park skateboarding for the women and the medal round there. That's an American sport. We've got to win something there. And what I'm wearing, well, it's the medal stand jacket. We've worn this 79 times already here at the Olympics. You've got the flag here. You've got USA across the back. And I want to show you something I think is really neat about this jacket. It is so cool because inside what they have is this note that's sewn into the inseam here, and it's to every Olympian. It talks about their sacrifices, their training, how proud their country is of what. Joe, Christine, I totally forgot I threw on the men's basketball jersey this morning. It was laying in the closet. I threw it up, but then I put the jacket on. Who knew? Who knew I was wearing this? And such good fortune. It's just a coincidence, I guess. But men's basketball taking on Brazil in the quarters here. It's their first possible elimination game, so they've got to get ready for the goal. Yeah, never know what you'll find in the closet here in Paris.
A man of disguises, many disguises. All right, Jay Gray.
Thanks so much, Jay.
All right, as you can probably see in the foreground here, we're going to end this hour in the skate park. The U.S. often credited for creating skateboarding as a sport and bringing it to the world stage.
And in this year's games, America brought home 2 medals in the men's street competition. And this morning, we are lucky to be joined by one of those medalists right here on set. Jagger Eaton won the silver for Team USA. First off, Jagger, nice to meet you. Congratulations. What an insane week. What kind of a high are you on right now?
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be sitting here. I am definitely on a medal high.
And you landed a move that hasn't been done in the competition before. Is that right?
Yes, that was a move I've been practicing. Very little practice, to be honest with you. It came at the time of need, and it worked out.
The fact that you landed that and it was still silver, what does that say about this year's competition?
Well, I mean, skateboarding has progressed immensely since the Olympic Games have been a part of it. I mean, any sport that the Olympic Games embraces legitimizes it to a whole different level. And you saw, I mean, Yuto is an amazing skateboarder.
What has, you talk about the fact that the sport has progressed so much, just what has this Olympic exposure meant for the sport? Not just the competition, but just the interest in it around the country and around the world. What have you seen?
Well, I mean, I see so many more young skateboarders. I see so many more kids picking up a skateboard and trying it out. And that is because we have so many more young eyes on skateboarding because of the Olympic Games. And especially in women's skateboarding, you see how young the podiums are, right? Like the women's street is unbelievable. All these girls are under 16 years old and they are skating unbelievable. And that is due to the progression that the Olympic process brings.
Can we talk about your journey? I mean, in Tokyo, you had a broken ankle. It feels good to skate with 2 healthy ankles and a lot of other health issues as well. You know, tell me about your journey and how it feels to be healthy and here and with a silver medal.
Yes, being a skateboarder and having 2 solid ankles helps a lot, especially at the Olympic Games, I'll tell you that. But yeah, I had a broken ankle in Tokyo. It wasn't anything that needed to be operated on or anything I couldn't skate through, but it definitely was a problem. But that's just, I mean, it's an occupational hazard to get hurt in skateboarding. It's just what it is. It's a part of it. You're always cut, you're always bruised, and sometimes you're broken.
If I had 4 healthy ankles, I still would not even come close to being able to do anything at all on a skateboard.
4 ankles would be hard on a skateboard.
Might be too many ankles. Well, obviously LA. We've got street, we've got park. Are you wanting to do both of these things? What are you thinking about LA in 4 years?
You know, being on this medal high, it's hard to think about LA right now. To be honest with you.
It's not fair, right?
No, but again, for me, you know, the Olympic Games has changed my life forever. And going for LA is going to be very exciting. And yes, I will be a part of both park and street.
We just saw Jay Grace show that, you know, that jacket with the note inside about how well you've done. I wonder if there's a line in there about parents, because all these parents, your parents who have to take you to all these classes or support your sport. Talk to me about what you're from a family of athletes.
Oh, my family has given everything for my career and my brother's success. I mean, both my parents were elite level gymnasts, and basically I was kind of a skateboarder raised like a gymnast. And so it was having that sort of discipline, that structure at a young age made me completely embrace the competitive aspect of skateboarding, and I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for them.
Hold up that medal so we can see it one more time there. Congratulations. How's it feel to hold that?
Thank you. It feels like a lot of work, and you know what's a bummer about holding this medal is that the journey's over. You know, the journey to Paris is over, and it took 2 years to get to that point to compete for that 20 minutes, and now it's done, and now I got some time off until I go for LA, which I'm going to embrace every part of as well.
Well, just ride this. This whole last week must feel like one day. Just ride this day as long as you can. Jagger, nice to see you. Thank you so much.
That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now. Good morning, I'm Christine Romans.
And I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, redemption tour completed. Simone Biles leaves Paris with 3 gold medals and a silver, bringing her total Olympic medal haul in her career to an incredible 11, cementing her place as America's greatest ever gymnast. More on her thrilling achievement. Plus, we're going to speak with sharpshooter Vincent Hancock after he grabbed gold in the men's skeet and silver in the mixed team event. Also this morning, Tropical Storm Debby is bulldozing its way toward the southeast coast, with Georgia and South Carolina now firmly in its sights after initially making landfall in Florida as a hurricane. At least 4 people have been killed amid the historic rainfall and powerful winds. South Carolina's governor warns his state to brace for the worst.
This is an animal that we don't think that we have seen before, so we must be very, very prepared.
We're also going to hear from the mayor of Charleston about how his city is preparing for the storm. Vice President Kamala Harris officially becomes the Democratic Party's presidential nominee overnight ahead of her blitz of battleground states. But one major question remains: who's going to join her on that tour as her running mate? We're going to take a look at the favorites as VP Harris gets set to reveal her pick for VP later today. Plus, pandemonium at the San Diego Zoo, which is welcoming its first pair of giant pandas in more than 2 decades. We've got the bare necessities you need to know about the furry duo as China revives its famous panda diplomacy. You know, I was actually there when the pandas were leaving San Diego. It was this emotional moment, but they were hoping for this moment to actually have them return.
Bare necessities. I see what you did there.
You go. It's a credit to our writers this morning. All right. This morning, Team USA now tied for the most gold medals won so far at the Paris Olympics. The U.S. continued to dominate the overall medal leaderboard with more podium finishes on Monday. That came from impressive performances from surfing and discus to 3-on-3 basketball.
We also saw the stars stars of women's gymnastics compete for the final time on their so-called redemption tour in what could be the last time we see Simone Biles take the stage at the Olympics. She won her 4th medal of the Paris Games with a silver medal in the floor exercise final. However, that came after missing out on another medal in the balance beam final because of an unfortunate slip. No matter what's next for the GOAT, Biles showed her strength yet again when speaking after that event.
I've accomplished way more than my wildest dreams, not just at this Olympics, but in the sport. So I can't be mad at my performances. A couple years ago, I didn't think I'd be back here at an Olympic Games. So competing and then walking away with 4 medals, I'm not mad about it. I'm pretty proud of myself.
Biles can leave Paris with her head held high after cementing herself as the greatest gymnast in U.S. history with 11 overall medals and 7 golds.
This morning, more than 150,000 people across Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina are waking up without power as Tropical Storm Debby batters the southeast. At least 5 people in Florida and Georgia, including 2 children, have died. The slow-moving storm is now taking aim at South Carolina, where it's set to dump nearly 3 feet of rain. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is tracking Debby's path from Charleston.
Debby has arrived in Charleston. For what it's worth, this morning, our crew had to scramble to find this location because we already have several low-lying roads around the city underwater. This area, by the way, also saw multiple confirmed tornadoes overnight as Debby marks day 2 of this devastating run. This morning, Debby is churning up America's East Coast.
This is an animal that we don't think that we have seen before. So we must be very, very prepared.
Slamming Georgia and South Carolina with what forecasters warn could be a once-in-a-1,000-year rain event. Overnight curfews in Savannah and Charleston, with some areas bracing for up to 25 inches of rain over the coming days.
If we get this amount of rain that is forecasted, it will totally overwhelm all of our systems and literally will create islands within the city.
Homes in Charleston already barricaded with sandbags and so-called tiger dams filled with water.
You know, I think wind is always scary and floods scary.
This after the storm, which began as a hurricane, turned fatal on day 1. In South Georgia, authorities say a 19-year-old man was killed after a tree fell on his home. A similar story in Florida, the sheriff saying this tree fell on a home outside Gainesville, crushing a 13-year-old boy. In Manatee County, frantic water rescues brought hundreds to higher ground.
Packed what we could in 15 minutes, waited for fire rescue to come. The house is destroyed.
The storm stalling over the state, dropping nearly a foot of rain in some spots and leaving close to 200,000 people without power across multiple states as millions more brace for Debby's wrath. And it is expected and feared that this storm basically will just hover overhead for days, dumping rain the entire time. So leading up to this, officials pleaded with people to have enough food and water to last them the week. Back to you.
All right, Maggie, thank you so much.
Okay, we are joined now by the mayor of Charleston, South Carolina, William Cogswell. Mayor, good morning, and thank you so much for taking time to join us today. First, tell us, what are the conditions like in Charleston right now, and what are you expecting in coming hours?
Well, it's wet right now, and we're expecting significantly more rainfall over the course of the day through tomorrow. And then the bigger concern we have is with all this moisture and rainfall, the saturation on the ground, because then we have winds coming. We have gusts up to 30 to 40 miles an hour right now, but that's going to continue through the upcoming days, and then potentially get up to 45 to 50 mile an hour gusts as late as Thursday, which is going to have trees going down and exacerbating the problems.
Let's talk about the rain. The current 24-hour rainfall record in South Carolina is just under 15 inches. That was 1999 when Hurricane Floyd hit the coast. Forecasters are predicting nearly twice that much rain in your state from this storm. What is your biggest worry right now? How do you even prepare for that much rain?
Look, this is unprecedented in terms of rainfall, and we've been trying to be very proactive. Starting on Saturday, started implementing trash pickup. We've cleaned out storm drains. We've deployed pumps to be on the ready. And we've also initiated a curfew starting yesterday, and all of those efforts have proven to be very effective. We had, fortunately, no rescues needed overnight, so we're in all likelihood going to extend that curfew for the next 24 hours. But just monitoring the weather, making sure people are staying safe, and keeping people off the roads. One of my biggest pet peeves is people going out and seeing, just wanting to see what's going on and driving through these flooded waters, stalling out. It really puts a strain on our first responders who are kind of going through their own Olympics, if you will, doing an incredible job keeping our streets clear and our citizens safe.
So that's your most important message for the next 24 hours is don't go out and be a look-see-loo. Don't try to take pictures out there. Just stay inside because it just strains your resources and rescue efforts.
Absolutely. Again, this is not something to be trifled with. This is a serious event. It's been sustained. Debbie is being a little annoying, I'll have to admit, hanging around for a little wearing out our welcome, if you will. But, people stay inside. I do think we have the systems in place, both short and long term. We've also been preparing for this for quite some time with starting 20 years ago, living with water. We're one of those places that is at sea level. So with the help of the state and federal government, we've been putting in place underground pumps and drainage systems, and also working with the Army Corps to protect the perimeter of the peninsula. So going through both short and long-term solutions to this issue are something that we've been working on for quite some time.
Sir, you have a beautiful city. We wish you the best over the next 24 hours or so. Mayor Cogswell, thank you for joining us this morning, and stay safe.
Thank you for having us.
All right, let's check in with meteorologist Angie Lastman for more on Debbie's latest track.
Angie, good morning.
Morning, guys. The mayor said it right. Wearing out a welcome. That is what this system's going to do for parts of the southeast over the next couple of days. We've got still a tropical storm Debby with winds at 45 miles per hour, just slowly moving to the north and east at 6 miles per hour. That's a little slower with this newest update from this system, but sitting about 20 miles southwest of Savannah, Georgia, as far as the center is concerned. Now, eventually, we're going to see this move offshore, but in the meantime, we have this kind of band of rain that has just set up and parked itself over parts of South Carolina for the entire morning. We've got some of this batch of heavy rain working into parts of North Carolina and the southern portions of that state, and we've still got some leftover rain across parts of Georgia. Now, these are some of the spots that we're going to continuously see heavy rain developing and lasting through the next couple of days. So no surprise, flood alerts are up, 11 million people included in that. I want you to pay special attention to Charleston under this flash flood warning in parts of Georgia as well as South Carolina. That likely going to last because, again, we saw that band of rain that's kind of set up there. We're not going to see that move a whole lot in the next 24 hours or so. We've still got plenty more chances to see some of this heavy rain develop. This is what's going to happen. The system will eventually move offshore. That'll likely happen later today, the center of it. But the rain is still going to be around. It's not going to be too far away from the coast, so we're still going to see much of that rain working its way in. We pick up more moisture from the Atlantic, and we see that system kind of hang out over the Atlantic over the next couple of days, maybe regaining a little bit of strength, not quite enough to make it a hurricane by the time it makes its secondary landfall, but it's going to do just that. By the time we get into Thursday, we'll see this system kind of gaining some strength and then eventually making a turn and working its way back into South Carolina. In the meantime, though, between now and then, either way, no matter where it makes landfall, it's going to be dumping a whole lot of rain continuously over that same region for the next couple of days. As we get into your Thursday, that's when the second landfall happens. Notice the flash flooding that we're looking at for inland areas. Today, it's more of the coastal areas, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, that we're really concerned about with that high risk of flash flooding. Here's some of the totals that we've already seen. You see over a foot in some spots. Savannah going to be close to 9 inches here in the last 48 hours. There's a lot more to come. Some spots could potentially get another 15, maybe 20 inches of rain by the time we get through at least Saturday. Again, this is a long duration kind of heavy rainfall event. When it comes to records, here's some tropical rainfall records that we see for some of these states. 23.63 inches. That's from Florence in 2018 for South Carolina. This is the spot that we're likely going to see a potential record being broken. We're expecting up to 25 inches across the state of South Carolina by the time we get into the end of the week. This would likely set a new record, so that will be something to watch. One other note, Not a whole lot of severe weather with this system otherwise, besides the rain and the storm surge, guys, but we could see some stronger storms across parts of the Northeast and the Great Lakes region here as we get through the day today from a separate situation. So lots to watch over the next couple of days.
All right, Angie, thank you.
Now to the race for the White House as Vice President Harris officially becomes the Democratic Party's nominee for president. She becomes the first woman of color to lead a major party ticket following a virtual roll call of Democratic delegates. This comes as the vice president is set to announce who her running mate will be today. Joining her on the ticket, Ms. Harris and her VP pick will be in Philly tonight for their first campaign event together. NBC News chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us from Philadelphia with more on what we can expect today. Peter, good morning.
Hey, Christine, good morning to you. This is where history is going to happen. Americans are going to get their first real look at the Democratic ticket for 2024, the rollout rally. A little excitement in Philly going to happen here at the home of the Temple Owls this evening. I spoke to a source within the last hour or so who tells me as of last night, Vice President Harris had not yet made a final decision, that she wanted to sleep on it for another night. That same source telling NBC News that the Harris campaign is prepared for any possible scenario, that it's even printed signs with her name on top and a variety of different possible VP picks beneath it for whatever decision she makes.
For Vice President Harris, it's decision day. Just hours from now, she's expected to appear for the first time together with her yet-to-be-named running mate here in Philadelphia, the first in a series of key battleground states they'll visit throughout the week. Harris's decision follows a rapid-fire vetting process, with the vice president meeting in person with at least 3 finalists over the weekend. Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, a former astronaut, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a retired school teacher whose motorcade was spotted returning from a Harris fundraiser in Minneapolis Monday, and Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro, the state's former attorney general, seen shooting hoops with his son outside their home and acknowledging the many reporters there.
Has the vice president called you tomorrow? Have a great night, okay?
Having a little fun with the speculation, Shapiro posting on social media, the countdown is on in Pennsylvania, 181 days until Groundhog Day. Another contender appears to be out of the mix, with the Transportation Department announcing Secretary Pete Buttigieg will be in Maine today, just as Harris is expected to be on stage with her new running mate. The vice president has been largely out of sight since last week, with the exception of this photo released by the White House Monday, where she joined President Biden in the Situation Room for a briefing on the developments in the Middle East. Former President Trump off the trail Monday, trying to capitalize on the stock market meltdown, blaming Harris for the sharp sell-off and predicting another Great Depression this year.
If Harris wins this election, you will quickly have a Kamala economic crash.
Mr. Trump said the same thing about Joe Biden 4 years ago, but the Dow has gone up by nearly 25% since President Biden took office. The Harris campaign accusing the former president of chaotic, ranting lies, noting during the start of the pandemic, Mr. Trump oversaw some of the worst days in the stock market in history.
So based on our reporting this morning, it sounds like we're going to get that final decision some point this morning, likely before noon. Sources familiar with the process tell us that it will likely come in the form of a digital video. There will be social media components, as well as, of course, a fundraising appeal. Christine and Joe, all of it a part of what is the most consequential decision of Vice President Harris's political career. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you so much.
Coming up, she was already the greatest ever American gymnast.
Now Simone Biles is leaving Paris with 4 more medals under her belt. We'll get more on her historic achievement and the dramatic moment that led to her teammate Jordan Childs picking up a surprise bronze. All that next. Welcome back. The U.S. added 7 new medals to its Paris tally on Monday with some great shots and even more coming today.
Yesterday, we saw the women's gymnastics team end their incredible Paris run with 2 medals. As Simone Biles further cemented her Olympic legacy as the GOAT with a silver to win her 4th medal of the Paris Games, while Jordan Childs earned bronze in dramatic fashion, all that happening on the floor. This also marks the first time in history that there has been an all-black podium in gymnastics at the Olympics. NBC's Jay Gray is our go-to Olympic expert. He joins us in Paris with all the action. So, Jay, talk more about the women's gymnastic events, how it all unfolded. A little bit of drama there.
Yeah, there was a bit of drama, Joe, Christine. Good to talk again. And it came first on the beam where Simone Biles, as well as Suni Lee, took a little tumble. Suni Lee's fall was rather dramatic, and they finished outside of the medal count there, so they finished 5th and 6th respectively in that. And then Simone Biles bouncing back quite literally with that powerful floor routine she has, but she landed out of bounds a couple of times, took home the silver. It was Jordan Childs where you had a little bit of the controversy. Initially, it was a Romanian gymnast who had finished 3rd for the bronze medal. The U.S. coaches said, hey, hold on a second. You didn't judge her routine on the proper difficulty level, and so they submitted the paperwork, showed some of the moves that she made during that routine, and the judges came back and said, look, you're absolutely right, and pulled the medal from Romania, and Childs ends up with the bronze. And it was so cool to see those two who trained together, who are besties off of the mat, winning and being on the podium together, as you talked about, an all-black podium for the first time in that sport. And it was just neat to see that maybe Simone didn't finish with the gold in the final event. She was all smiles and has been throughout this Olympics. She called it her redemption tour. Redemption was achieved here. She was great.
Jay, after that 100 meters race, we saw another photo finish that led to Team USA taking a medal. This time it was the triathlon mixed relay. What happened there? And who else won a medal on the day?
How crazy is this? Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're in there, and it's the triathlon mixed relay, so they're doing all the crazy events. It comes down to the finish. I mean, it is so close at the finish. Germany with a 1:25.39, the U.S. with a 1:25.40. So that's how close things were in this race. The Americans get the silver, and obviously no shame in that. What a great finish for Team USA. We also saw some other medals in the track and field events for Team USA, and we expect more tonight. It should be a lot of fun. We're getting greedy. Excuse me, guys. Yeah, I'm just so worked up.
You're so worked up.
I had to sneeze. No, we are getting greedy with the medals. Yeah, we want them all.
With all these photo finishes, thank goodness there are all those cameras everywhere.
I know, right?
You can't miss it. All right, so Jay, we want more medals. Apparently, we're going to be more greedier. Where does this leave us in the medal count? What's the best chances of winning today?
Look, we've got some great chances to win today, again in the track and field, especially to 200 meters. But let's take a look at that medal count. The medal count is all about America at this point. On top, in both total medals with 79, 21 golds. And listen, there was some back and forth about, well, the USA just wants to count medals and not golds, and the IOC counts golds first. Well, there you go. We've got it all now. 21 golds, 30 silvers, 28 bronze puts us on top any way you want to count the medals. China's second. France, the home country, having a great Olympics here, and they are third, 48 overall. Great Britain, and then Australia. So a strong showing for Team USA with a lot of opportunities still to come. And excuse me for the sneeze earlier, guys.
Okay, bless you, Jay. Bless you.
Nice to see you, Jay. Thank you so much. All right, besides watching the Olympics, many fans in Paris are hoping to taste France's famous sweet treat, the macaron. But how easy is it to make this colorful dessert? Have you seen them? Have you had them?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So
yeah, of course. And how hard is it to say, too, for some folks? All right, our very own Savannah Sellers caught up with an esteemed French pastry chef to find out.
They're the colorful cookies that crunch, crumble, and entice. The macaron, a French dessert that has been around for nearly 2 centuries, replicated by many, but revolutionized by only one, the so-called Picasso of pastry, Pierre Hermé. His avant-garde flavor combinations have become so iconic, we decided to drop by one of his shops to try these Parisian treats.
Bonjour. Hello.
The selection, an intriguing kaleidoscope of tastes and hues.
Did you say olive oil? Yes, olive oil and mandarin one. Yes.
Irresistible to any palate.
And this one for you.
I have to try these right now. I think that's the best sweet I've ever had. I have to know how to make these. Let's go try.
So we went to find one of Pierre Hermé's macaron masters.
We're at headquarters. Hi, I'm Savannah.
I'm Mikael. Nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Are you up for it?
Yes.
Let's go.
Mikael is an expert pastry chef at Pierre Hermé. Today, he's showing me the basics.
So first things first, I need to make sure I know how to say this word correctly. What are we making today?
Macaron.
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 Okay, there we go. All right, now we're set.
Then came the hard part. Mixing, stirring, and boiling all at the same time.
I forgot about the sugar already while I was mixing this.
The process proved to be a little chaotic. Still, every step requires patience, precision.
Don't move. Stay at the same place.
And lots of practice to pull off the perfect pastry.
Very slowly. Not too much. Little bit less.
It's gonna be very polite.
After a quick bake, wow, it was finally time for the key ingredient, that delectable chocolate passion fruit ganache.
Oh my goodness.
You have the milk chocolate, the passion fruit.
It's so good.
Chocolate.
Since every cookie is the same flavor, this ultra creamy filling is actually the only thing that differentiates one macaron's taste from another.
Let's try all our hard work.
Yeah.
Okay. Cheers.
The result?
So worth it. It's amazing. Thank you for having us. Merci.
Merci.
Tough assignment, Savannah. Tough assignment. Thanks to Savannah for that report.
All right, this morning, Venezuela is cracking down on recent election protests with a criminal probe.
NBC International's correspondent Josh Lederman joins us now with that story and more headlines from around the world. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, Christine. Venezuela's government is opening that criminal investigation into the opposition after the disputed results of Venezuela's election. The Attorney General says he is opening the investigation into allegations the opposition incited violence by their calls for the military to stop supporting Maduro and stop targeting anti-government protesters. The U.S. says Maduro actually lost that election and has recognized his opponent as the winner. Now let's head to North Korea, where tensions with South Korea are once again on the rise after 250 tactical ballistic missile launchers were delivered to the front lines. Photos released by North Korean state media showed leader Kim Jong-un presiding over a nighttime ceremony where rows of launchers were lined up alongside red victory banners. South Korea's military says it believes the launchers are intended to attack or threaten the South. And finally, over to China, where soil samples brought back from the moon have revealed a groundbreaking discovery: water molecules. Although water in other forms has been discovered on the moon before, this is the first time it's been found in physical samples in its molecular form, what we call H2O, and in part of the moon where scientists thought water was impossible. It is now raising hopes that it could one day help make the moon a habitable place for humans to live, although I think we're still maybe just a little bit out from that point.
Not happening next week. All right, Josh. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, coming up, Google in the dock.
Yeah, a U.S. judge rules the tech titan has violated antitrust laws over its search engine. What the major decision means for the company and its users going forward, that's next. Welcome back. Let's return to this morning's big political story with Vice President Harris set to announce today who her running mate will be.
The newly minted Democratic ticket will hold its first campaign event tonight in Philadelphia.
More on this, let's bring in NBC News chief political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck, good to have you with us. So we know the Harris campaign vetted 6 potential VP candidates. We know it's basically down to 3. Some think it's really down to 2. What are you looking for today as Harris makes this huge announcement?
Well, I think it's been interesting to watch the weekend and watch how many many interest groups on the left made made it clear who they didn't want, right? You had certain entities come out against Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. You had other entities come out against Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona. It's interesting, Tim Walz didn't really have any of those specific detractors, and I think it gets it to what I'm curious to see is, does the vice president, how much stock does she put into some of the complaints that certain progressive members of the party, including a senator from Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, said about Governor Shapiro? How much does that stuff matter to her? A pick of Tim Walz is a way of sort of indicating that she's looking for a do-no-harm pick, somebody that can help but doesn't sort of create internal party division. So that's my curiosity. How much did the outside groups play a role here? I think if Tim Walz is the pick, I think it's fair to say they played a big role.
He's the governor of Minnesota, a former teacher, a veteran, I think, too,
yes,
right?
Yes.
He ticks a lot of boxes, but the swing states, our conventional wisdom has, are very important here. Josh Shapiro is the governor of a very important swing state in Pennsylvania. How important is it for the Harris ticket holding its first rally tonight in Philadelphia and then getting out to those swing states?
Well, look, I mean, we can debate whether a running mate can help in a swing state or not. I do think it's the other signal that she'd be sending if she doesn't go with either Kelly or Shapiro, because both Kelly and Shapiro are to her political right. While Tim Walz and her maybe are in the same lane ideologically or you know, very similar, by not picking either Shapiro or Kelly, she is sending one message to the party, and that may, you know, some would argue that may hurt her chances to appeal to the middle. Look, I look at a guy like Mark Kelly, who's somebody that could help her on what is probably her weakest issue with the public, and that is the border, you know, and her role in it. He's somebody who, during his reelection in 2022, was very critical of the Biden and Harris administration policies. Governor Shapiro is also somebody that is seen a little bit more left of center than he is sort of mainstream liberal Democrat. So I think that's another aspect of this. You know, obviously, if they don't pick Shapiro and they lose Pennsylvania, she'll second guess herself for the rest of her life. But I'd be careful just picking somebody to win one state. What else do you want them to do?
No matter who she picks, we have seen her close the gap just over the last couple of weeks in the polls. Yeah. Is there room for Harris to grow at all, or is this just where we are right now as America, where these two are, is deadlocked, and it's going to come down to just every vote on Election Day?
My sneaking suspicion is that she's gotten her bump, what would normally be a convention bump for a candidate. She got sort of early because of the unusual circumstances. And in many ways, if you look at her success in the polling, it's really she's gotten the Democratic coalition back together again, right? If she gets another bump, if her poll numbers go up more, then I think we can have a different conversation. But I suspect we're now at sort of the peak, you know, sort of back to where we were when the board was reset 2 years ago, Joe.
Yeah, and she still has to introduce herself to a lot of Americans. She was a vice president, but she has to talk about what she did, you know, with the banks.
Some interviews.
Yeah, you know, her story. All right, Chuck, thanks so much. All right, now to another development in former President Trump's hush money case. The Supreme Court has rejected a long-shot bid by the state of Missouri to delay Trump's sentencing and lift the gag order in that case.
The former president was convicted, of course, of 34 counts for falsifying business records related to payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels during the 2016 campaign.
All right, for more on this, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos, who joins us on the set. Good morning, Danny. So can you walk us through, I guess, Missouri's argument here?
It's a creative one. Missouri is basically arguing that the state of New York is interfering with Missouri's voters and their electors by either sentencing Donald Trump or gagging Donald Trump. And gagging, for example, prevents Donald Trump from speaking and informing Missouri voters on the issues. It is a fascinating kind of the kind of argument that you might have in a coffee house about whether or not a state can enjoin another state. But it is a stretch. They rely on a Supreme Court decision that says that you can't interfere with a state's administration of an election, but they're making a kind of stretch, which is this criminal case in New York is interfering with Missouri's administration of its election. But that has now been, that is not a winner. The Supreme Court has denied this effort. So it's likely not moving forward from here.
The criticism was this was just a political stunt here. I mean, was there a legal argument you saw in there somewhere that they could have standing in a case like this?
Well, take a look. The Supreme Court's probably the most receptive court in the land to this argument, being a majority conservative court, and yet they still rejected it. Look, the bottom line is this. It's creative, but if one state could enjoin another state's criminal prosecutions, that could be a real problem, because normally states don't control what other states do. And something like criminal prosecution is something uniquely within the power of a state to do. Other states really can't do anything. A governor in Missouri can't pardon a New York criminal prosecution, obviously. This would be kind of on par with that level of interference. So probably the right result for the union.
Danny, remind us when Trump is expected to be sentenced in this case, and is that something that could happen before the election, after the election?
It is not likely to happen before the election, if only because there are now pending motions based on the Supreme Court's immunity decision to get rid of the New York case. a bit of a long shot compared to the other criminal cases against Donald Trump, because so little of the conduct in the New York case could be said to have been presidential conduct. Most of it happened before Trump was in the White House. But so far-reaching is the Supreme Court's decision on immunity that anything arguably connected, for example, the testimony that came from Madeleine Westerhout or Hope Hicks, that evidence that came on after Trump was in the White House might have been improperly introduced. So even a case that at first blush appears to have nothing at all to do with being the president might have evidence in it that is tainted as a result of the Supreme Court's immunity decision.
How's this going to be hashed out then in the end?
That is a question that at least 3 judges are going to grapple with in this case. One has already dismissed it. It's going to be really difficult to see, how do you even hold an evidentiary hearing? What evidence comes in? Some of the evidence is excluded according to the Supreme Court. How do you even do this? We're all going to be doing this for the first time and watching in real time as it happens, a first in American history.
All right. Danny, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, now to a massive loss handed down to Google as a judge ruled Monday that the tech giant illegally held a monopoly in both the search and advertising markets. Google was accused of staying on top of the general search market by creating strong barriers to entry and a feedback process that helped ensure its dominance. The decision is the first anti-monopoly ruling against a tech company in decades. In response to the ruling, Google said in a statement, this decision recognizes that Google offers the best search engine, but concludes that we shouldn't be allowed to make it easily available. Joining us now for more on this is Ashley Gold. She is the senior technology policy reporter at Axios. Ashley, good morning. This is the biggest antitrust ruling of the internet era. Explain why this is such a landmark case.
This is such a landmark case because until now, the biggest technologies of today, that includes Google, Amazon, Apple, Meta, they have been accused of antitrust violations, but they've never actually been found guilty of them by a judge. It's all been a little bit theoretical. These are judges and lawyers at the Justice Department and the Federal Trade Commission that have sort of been testing new theories about antitrust and how it should work in the 21st century. And this time they got a major win, and they proved, hey, just because your product is free and people like to use it, doesn't mean consumers can't be harmed. It doesn't mean you're not engaging in anti-competitive behavior. And for the first time, a judge was convinced of this argument. This could change how technology companies like Google do business completely going forward.
The judge finding that it's free, it's popular, but it is still a monopoly. Following the decision, Google's president of global affairs said it plans to appeal. What has Google argued throughout the trial?
Google has argued all throughout the trial that everything they do is in the service of customers, in the service of their users, that people love Google, that people love Google search, and they choose it because it's the best search engine out there. And that might be true. But what the judge has been arguing is that people are locked in and they don't have a choice. It is the default option on their iPhones and on their Androids. And these other companies that maybe wanted to become a successful web browser like Google never really stood a chance because of this anti-competitive behavior. Google says, you can't criticize us, you can't knock us for simply being the best and consumers loving us the most. And that's all we've ever tried to do.
And actually, Google is looking at another trial in September against the DOJ for a case on the company's advertising technology. So what can you tell us about that, and how will this ruling affect, I think, future antitrust cases?
I think it'll affect it insofar as judges and prosecutors, lawyers at the DOJ, now they know how to argue these cases. It's really hard for people to argue technology cases when we're talking about laws that are from decades ago. But this sort of probably gave them a little confidence that they can do it. Now, the actual technology here that we're talking about, the actual case at hand is a little different. But now the case has been proven. Google is a big company with a lot of assets, and they've engaged in anti-competitive behavior to sort of leverage that. And their advertising technology company is also very dominant. So I would say it doesn't bode super well for that case, considering there was some success here in the search case.
Certainly history-making. Ashley Gold, thank you so much.
Coming up, the Bears are back in town.
San Diego Zoo welcomes a pair of giant pandas as China rekindles its famed panda diplomacy. How the furry animals are settling into their new surroundings. That's next. This morning, we're looking to Wall Street after a global market meltdown Monday on fears the Federal Reserve has waited too long to cut cut interest rates.
The three major indexes finished down more than 2% yesterday after Japan suffered its worst day since 1987's Black Monday crash. Who better to discuss this with than our very own senior business correspondent who's sitting next to me. First of all, just explain what happened yesterday. We saw it the worst in 2 years for the stock
so
market.
it actually started last Wednesday in Japan, where the Bank of Japan raised interest rates, and that disrupted this very popular trade that involves Japanese yen, the U.S. dollar, and currencies. It's very complicated, kind of like the plumbing of the international markets kind of thing. And then when the jobs report came out on Friday and was a little bit weaker than expected, by Monday morning or Sunday night in Asia, there was a lot of concern that things were kind of coming unglued. You saw the Nikkei, the Japanese stock market, fall 12%, the worst day it's ever had. And then you had concerns that the U.S. may be behind the curve on cutting interest rates, and so that caused some selling in the U.S. So it was kind of a feedback cycle, really, when you look at it that way.
We've heard some people flirt with whether to use the R word,
Right.
recession. How great are the recession fears?
So I don't like to use it because, honestly, at 2.8% GDP growth in the second quarter and 4.3% unemployment rate is very low, the economy is strong and stable right now. It's just cooling because the Fed has been raising interest rates for so long to try to prevent inflation or to try to quell inflation. We're so far away from the R word, but those fears and those risks can dominate how people place their money and place their bets in the stock market. So I think you're going to also markets overreact. They did yesterday. You look at the Nikkei; it's up it closed up 10%. So it fell 12% and then came back 10%. So it's good. I think volatility is here for now.
Let's talk about the Fed, because last week they decided to keep interest rates where they are, and we're going to wait until September, it looks like, to decide that they're probably going to lower them. Is that, how big of a factor is that here?
So the conventional wisdom is the Fed will begin to lower interest rates. The Fed didn't lower interest rates last week because inflation is still too high. And so it's this needle that the Fed is threading here. And what the market freak out yesterday was that maybe they're not going to get it just exactly right. I will say, when you look out right now for you at home, an important thing here is mortgage rates are falling. They fell to 6.3% yesterday. Several experts have told me they expect mortgage rates maybe to go down to 5% by the end of the year. So that's important for all of you who are borrowing money to buy a home. And also, if you're an investor, a buy and hold investor with a plan, none of this should bother you. So let's get a plan. Make sure you have your asset allocation correctly, and this is just one of those moments where you bought stocks a little bit weaker.
And maybe just ignore the 401k yesterday and look at it maybe at the end of the week, perhaps. We'll see.
Say, if you are scrambling to find your login for your 401k, that means you don't have a good plan. So this is a good reminder. Everybody, let's get a good plan. Buy and hold for the long term. That's the best strategy.
All right. Appreciate it, Christine. Thank you so much. All right, now to San Diego, where giant pandas are once again back at the zoo. These two giant pandas are the first of several scheduled to come to the U.S. from China as part of an exchange program. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz is at the San Diego Zoo. She got a chance to meet the new pandas before their big debut. I am jealous. Liz, good morning. Tell us about it.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, if I can't be in Paris, this is a pretty good assignment, not going to lie. There is so much excitement leading up to this moment. We got to see the pandas up close. They are as adorable as you would expect. And in just 2 days from now, Panda Ridge here, the entrance will open, and these beautiful black and white bears will finally get to meet their adoring fans.
At the San Diego Zoo, it's pandemonium.
We're excited. We've been waiting.
You have a panda on your hat.
I do, yeah.
After 6 weeks in quarantine, 5-year-old boy Yoon Schwan and 4-year-old girl Sing Bao will finally make their public debut.
How exciting is this for the zoo?
This is a monumental moment.
The adorable black and white bears from the Sichuan province in China are the first giant pandas to enter the U.S. in more than 2 decades. And we got a sneak peek ahead of the crowds.
Okay, Sing Bao has just woken up. She's just come out to eat breakfast. There she is. She is so cute.
We watched as the pandas explored their new home, taking baths and chowing down on their favorite foliage.
What are their personalities like?
So he's pretty chill. He loves to just sit and eat his bamboo, as you can see. She's very intelligent and very curious, and we just watch her mind working.
The arrival of the bears is a revival of China's so-called panda diplomacy, the government lending the beloved animals to foreign countries as a sign of goodwill and to help protect the vulnerable species.
when you think about our role in conservation, you think about how we try to protect and save wildlife around the world, this gives us an opportunity to share that directly with our guests.
The San Diego Zoo received its first pandas almost 30 years ago. In fact, Yun Chuan's mother was born here. The bears so popular, they've made their way into pop culture.
The rare panda at the San Diego Zoo is pregnant.
This is a big one.
Now, 20 years later, Panda Watch is back on, ready for a new generation to experience their wonder.
I hope when people come to the San Diego Zoo and they see the giant pandas, they get that sense of amazement, that sense of connection, and maybe even a sense of responsibility in terms of what they can do to help conserve wildlife.
Now, guys, what's cuter than panda bears? Well, panda babies, of course. We are told eventually that is the plan. Right now, they're keeping the pandas in 2 separate enclosures until they're ready to mate, so stay tuned for that. If you want to come see them soon, you might want to start planning now. Tickets for this month are already starting to sell out, but the good news is you have some time. They're going to be here on loan at the zoo for the next 10 years.
All right, very good. 10 years. Glad to hear it. Liz, thank you so much. What a fun assignment.
Baby pandas are cute. Coming up, we've got an Olympian in our midst.
Yeah, skeet medalist and sharpshooter supreme Vincent Hancock joins us to talk about his big wins out of Paris as we continue our Olympics coverage. That is coming up next.
We're back now with a look at the historic achievements for Team USA at the Summer Olympics in Paris.
This week, skeet shooter Vincent Hancock made history by joining the likes of, get this, Carl Lewis, Michael Phelps, and Katie Ledecky as one of just 7 Olympians in U.S. history who've won gold in the same event in 4 different Olympics. This morning, we're lucky enough to be joined now by gold medalist himself, Vincent Hancock. Congratulations on a truly history-making win. I mean, what does it mean not only to win, but to be in the same elite company as the names I just mentioned?
Well, thanks for having me first off. But being able to have my name with those people, it's a dream come true. I mean, I never thought that when I first started this, however many years ago it's been now, it's been so long, that I would be mentioned alongside their names. It would have blown my mind, and I would have said, no way. But now I'm fortunate enough, thank God, that I was able to do it again and walk away with 4 golds.
Fortunate and talented. Vincent, you served in the Army for 6 years. You were joined on Team USA by 9 fellow service members. Tell us about that bond with your teammates who also served.
It's awesome, and it's super special as well. You know, when I was in the military and I was serving through my first 2 Olympic Games in 2008, 2012, you're representing so much more than just yourself. You're representing your entire country on multiple levels. So not just as Team USA, but also on the military side. It has a whole new level, and knowing that I'm competing here with my brothers and sisters in arms, doing what we do best, doing what we love to do, it's really special.
So the final came down to you and Connor Price, who's not only another member of Team USA, he's one of the prodigies that you coached after opening up your own shooting range in Texas. What is that like to be competing with someone who you've trained? Was there a part of you who's like, maybe I shouldn't have trained him so well?
Honestly, it was just thinking back to myself, okay, this is exactly what we do in practice every single day. And that's one of the nice things about being able to work with him as well as shoot alongside him on a daily basis is that we're practicing and pushing each other every single day, day in and day out. And we spoke this into existence years ago. We wanted to go 1-2. That was our dream. That's what we wanted to do. We've been working for it. We've been practicing it at home before we came up here, even just the last couple of days when we have some off-site training. Like, hey, this shoot-off is for gold and silver. This is what we're going to go do. We can do it. And we stepped out and absolutely showed out. And thankfully, this has been probably the coolest thing in my career is being able to go out, yes, win a gold, but also to have my teammate and really good friend win a silver medal right behind me.
After competing against the world's best in London, Rio, Tokyo, and now in Paris, is there any moment that stands out to you that you can pass along to your students at the range?
The biggest thing is always remember to take in all the sights and sounds. And as we were getting done, even before we were done with the competition, I was reminding Connor and Austin as well, we're in the mixed team just yesterday, take everything in, the sights, the sounds, the smells, remember it all, because for as awesome as it is, that feeling is fleeting because it's just a very small piece of time. But if you can remember all of those different sensations, then you can make that moment last. And that's the important part, is remembering that you had fun doing what you loved and you were able to walk away with some hardware too.
And And now we see why you're such a great coach. That's like
yeah, exactly.
absolutely incredible.
I wrote down,
advice.
take it in. I want to do that in my life. Take it in, Romans. Take it in.
Vincent Hancock, congratulations. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really do appreciate it.
All right, we want to end the hour celebrating.
Thank you again for having me.
Of course. We want to end the hour celebrating another aspect of France, the food.
Yeah, the nation is home to some of the best restaurants in the world. But to be a real local means to shop for ingredients at a street market. Our very own Savannah Sellers took a tour through some of the oldest ones in Paris for a closer look at what makes them special.
The heart of many of Paris's neighborhoods are marchés, the French word for markets, where Parisians and foodies flock to buy the freshest fruit, vegetables, meats, fish, and cheese, or just watch the world go by. One of the most famous, the oldest in France, opened more than 400 years ago.
Welcome to Le Marché des Enfants Rouges. Let me show you around.
The first stop on our taste tour, Les Stand, a vegetarian joint where we find Tatiana grilling up today's special.
It smells amazing.
Thank you very much.
What you're making.
Thank you.
Tell me what you're doing.
So this is like a French toast, but with brioche. And we're going to garnish the salty side with avocado, and for the sweets, with the chocolate.
I just had to have a taste of this culinary creation.
This is so good. I love it.
Everybody has to try this, seriously.
This historic market is home to the Butcher of Paris, a burger bar, and a land with his TikTok famous sandwiches.
Hello, what do you want?
He left his job as a psychotherapist because he wanted to feed the stomach and the soul.
I want people happy for when he eat my sandwich.
If cooking at home is more your speed, Marché des Aligres may be for you. Founded in the 18th century, the building's roof is shaped like the hull of a boat. Home to fishmongers, meat sellers, and a shop to buy France's famous butter. Outside, a street where you can smell the freshness of the food.
What are you shopping for today?
I'm shopping for fruits and vegetables to make couscous.
Just down the street, Pierre is picking peppers for his 9 guests tonight.
Why shop here instead of in a supermarket?
Because it's less expensive.
The savings are nice, but so is the happiness food can bring.
Our thanks to Savannah for that report. You know, not that it's the same thing, but I used to live in Seattle.
Yeah.
And we lived near Pike Place Market, and that was like a grocery store.
Right.
We would go down there, and we would get some fresh fruits and vegetables and all sorts of treats, and it was lovely.
So therapeutic about just like wandering those stalls.
Exactly. All right, that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.